My name is Noah, and I work as a digital evidence analyst for the State Police Records Division, a department most officers forget exists until they need something buried or something found. Most of my shifts involve digitizing decades-old case files, restoring corrupted dashcam footage, and dealing with the profound tedium that comes from watching the same procedural mistakes repeat themselves across 40 years of archived reports. At least that was my experience until 6 weeks ago, when I opened case tape 110012 and triggered something I still cannot explain and cannot stop watching. The file came to me on November 3rd through standard archival request protocol. No urgency flag, no priority designation, just another corrupted video file in a queue of 200 others waiting for restoration attempt. The metadata was sparse. Original recording date, April 19th, 2003. Location, Blackwood Forest Road, mile marker 7. Incident type, traffic stop/possible MBA. Reviewing officer, Lieutenant Marcus Reed, badge 2847. The file had been tagged corrupted/do not restore in 2004 and buried in offline storage where it had remained untouched for 21 years. I should have left it corrupted, should have marked it as unrecoverable and moved to the next file in the queue. But something about the burial notation bothered me. Files get corrupted accidentally through hardware failure or software degradation. They do not get deliberately tagged for non-restoration unless someone wants them to stay buried. I ran the restoration protocol anyway, expecting the usual outcome of partial recovery or complete data loss. The file opened perfectly on the first attempt. But before we begin, click subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more captivating stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. The footage began at 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 33 seconds according to the dashcam timestamp. Standard patrol car perspective, positioned behind a vehicle on a two-lane road cutting through dense forest. Red and blue emergency lights strobing across wet asphalt, reflecting off fog so thick it created walls of shifting gray on both sides of the frame. The patrol car door opened. An officer stepped out, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness as he approached a sedan parked partially on the shoulder ahead. But that was not what made me stop the playback and rewind to the beginning. It was the fire. Approximately 50 yards beyond the stopped sedan, flames consumed what appeared to be another vehicle lodged against the embankment on the right side of the road. Not the chaotic spreading fire of a fresh collision, but flames that burned with unnatural stillness, as if someone had paused the video mid-frame. The fire did not flicker or dim or expand. It simply existed, frozen in perpetual combustion, casting orange light across the fog without producing visible smoke. And, standing in the road between the patrol car and that burning wreckage was a woman. She was not running from the fire. She was not flagging down the officer for help. She was standing completely still in the center of the lane, facing the approaching patrol car with an expression of calm recognition that seemed wrong for someone witnessing what should have been a fatal collision. She appeared to be in her early 30s, wearing jeans and a gray jacket, dark hair loose around her shoulders, hands at her sides like she was waiting for an appointment rather than standing on a fog-bound road at 2 in the morning beside burning wreckage. The officer's flashlight beam reached her first, and she did not flinch or shield her eyes from the light. She simply looked at him with the patient expression of someone who had been expecting his arrival and was relieved he had finally shown up. The officer's voice came through clear on the dashcam audio, professional but cautious. "Ma'am, are you injured? Was it your vehicle?" The woman shook her head slowly. "Not yet," she said. The officer paused, flashlight steady on her face. "Not yet what?" "Not yet injured," the woman replied. "That happens in about 15 minutes. I stopped the playback there and checked the incident report attached to the file. Lieutenant Reed's documentation was brief and procedural. Traffic stop conducted at 2:17 hours on Blackwood Forest Road. Driver identified as Sophia Bennett, age 31, valid license, no warrants. Vehicle inspection negative for contraband. Subject released without citation at 2:31 hours. Backup units responded to reported MVA at same location at 2:43 hours. Single vehicle collision, fire involved. No survivors located at scene. Investigation pending. The report made no mention of Sophia Bennett being present during the backup response. Made no connection between the woman stopped at 2:17 and the collision reported at 2:43. Treated them as separate incidents occurring in the same location 26 minutes apart, as if the woman standing 50 yards from burning wreckage during the traffic stop had nothing to do with the fire that would claim a victim by the time other units arrived. I rewound the footage and played it again from the beginning. Everything identical to the first viewing. Same timestamp, same fog, same frozen fire. Sophia standing in the same position with the same expression. But this time I noticed something I had missed initially. When the officer's flashlight beam first landed on her, she was not looking at him. She was looking directly at the dashcam lens. Looking at the camera with the focused attention of someone who knew they were being recorded and wanted to make sure whoever watched this footage later would see her face clearly. The officer began walking toward her, his boots visible at the bottom of the frame as he approached. His voice again, slightly closer now. "Ma'am, I need you to step to the shoulder. You are standing in an active traffic lane." Sophia shook her head without breaking eye contact with the camera. "If I move, it happens faster," she said quietly. "The order has to stay the same, or everything accelerates." "What order?" the officer asked. "This conversation," Sophia replied. "You asking questions I have already answered. Me telling you things you will not believe until you see them yourself. The trunk search that finds nothing because there is nothing to find. All of it has to happen exactly the same way, or the timing changes and I do not make it to 2:31. The officer's flashlight beam lowered slightly, his body language shifting from procedural to uncertain. "Ma'am, have we met before? Have I stopped you on this road previously?" Sophia smiled without warmth. 17 times, she said, but you only remember the last one. The one where you find me after it happens, instead of before. I paused the footage again and pulled up Lieutenant Reed's service record. He had transferred to a different district in 2004, 3 months after this incident. Early transfer request approved without disciplinary notation. I searched for any follow-up reports on the Blackwood Forest Road collision. The investigation had been marked unresolved/closed in 2005 with a notation that insufficient evidence prevented positive victim identification. The burned vehicle had no readable VIN. The remains recovered were too damaged for dental comparison. No missing persons reports matched the timeline or location. The case disappeared into the archives as an unsolved traffic fatality with no confirmed victim. But I had just watched Sophia Bennett tell an officer she would be injured in 15 minutes, standing beside fire that was already burning, speaking about events that should have been happening for the first time, but that she described as repetition she had experienced 17 times before. I played the footage forward. The officer radioed for backup, his voice tight with confusion as he requested additional units and fire response to his location. While he spoke into his radio, Sophia remained motionless in the center of the lane, her eyes still fixed on the dashcam. Behind her, the frozen fire suddenly moved. A single flicker, quick enough that I almost missed it. The flames shifted position slightly, as if someone had advanced a paused video by exactly 1 frame, then locked into a new pattern of motionless burning. When the officer turned back from his radio call, Sophia was no longer standing in the same spot. She had moved closer to the patrol car, now positioned about 10 feet from the front bumper. The officer's flashlight snapped up, illuminating her face again. "How did you?" he began. "You always ask that," Sophia interrupted. "And I always tell you I did not move. You looked away, and time jumped forward. That is how it works here. The road decides when things happen, and we just follow the script until we reach the end." The officer's hand moved toward his service weapon, resting on the grip without drawing. "Ma'am, I need you to stay where you are and keep your hands visible." "I'm not a threat," Sophia said calmly. "I'm already dead. I have been dead since the first time you pulled me over. You are not stopping a driver, Lieutenant Reed. You are arriving at a crime scene that keeps repeating because someone buried the evidence before anyone could understand what really happened here." The dashcam timestamp flickered. 4:1 frame. It showed 2 hours, 29 minutes, and 41 seconds. Then it jumped back to 2 hours, 19 minutes, and 7 seconds. The footage continued playing from that earlier point, as if nothing had changed, but Sophia's position had advanced again. She now stood directly in front of the patrol car, close enough that her face filled the lower third of the frame. Her expression no longer calm, but urgent. "You need to check the trunk," she said. "Not mine. The one behind me. Before the fire reaches the driver's door. That is where you will find what they buried. That is why the file was corrupted. Because someone watched this and saw what I am about to show you." I stopped the playback and sat in silence in my office. Rain tapping against the window, the only sound in the building at 11:40 on a Tuesday night when I should have been processing routine digitization requests instead of watching footage that violated every principle of linear time and cause and effect I had been trained to trust in evidence documentation. I checked the file properties. No edit history. No restoration logs showing previous access attempts. The file had been opened exactly once before my access tonight, 21 years ago by Lieutenant Marcus Reed, 3 days before he requested transfer out of the district. I played the footage forward to the trunk search. The officer approached the burning vehicle against all protocol, flashlight raised as he circled to the rear. The trunk was already open, lid popped slightly as if someone had released it before the fire started. The officer pulled it fully open and shone his light inside. The camera angle did not capture what he saw, but his reaction was visible as he staggered backward, hand over his mouth, radio falling from his belt as he dropped to his knees in the middle of the road. Sophia's voice came through the dashcam audio, soft and clear despite her being nowhere visible in frame. "Now you understand," she said. "Now you know why some evidence gets buried instead of investigated. Why some files are marked corrupted instead of reviewed. Why some cases close without answers." The footage cut to black. The timestamp froze at 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 33 seconds. When I reopened the file 3 minutes later to review what I had just witnessed, Sophia was wearing a different jacket. Same woman, same road, same frozen fire. But her gray jacket had changed to dark green. Her hair was damp now, clinging to her face like she had just walked through heavy rain that had not fallen anywhere in the footage. And when the officer first approached her in this version of the recording, she looked directly at the dash cam and smiled. Not the calm expression from before, but recognition mixed with something that looked uncomfortably like relief. Like she had been waiting 21 years for someone to finally open this file and watch what happened to her again. I rewound the footage to 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 33 seconds and let it play without interruption, determined to document every detail of the original interaction before the file changed again. The dashcam captured everything with clinical precision, the kind of unblinking record that should have made this evidence ironclad instead of buried. The patrol car door opened at 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 41 seconds. Lieutenant Reed's boots hit the wet asphalt with a sound like tearing paper amplified through the external microphone. His flashlight clicked on, beam cutting through fog dense enough to have texture, and swept across the stopped sedan before landing on Sophia Bennett standing in the road. She spoke before he did. "You're late tonight," Sophia said, her voice clear despite the 20 feet separating them. "You usually stop me by 2:16. The extra minute changes things." Reed's flashlight steadied on her face. His response came after a pause that felt longer than it measured. "Ma'am, do I know you?" "Not yet," Sophia replied. "But you will. In about 26 minutes, you'll know me better than you'll want to." Reed took 3 steps forward, his shadow stretching across the wet pavement toward her. "I need you to identify yourself and explain what you're doing standing in an active roadway at this hour." "I'm waiting," Sophia said. She did not move, did not shift her weight or adjust her stance. Just stood with her arms at her sides like a person waiting for a bus that was already 15 minutes late. "The same thing I do every time. I wait for you to ask the right questions so we can get to the part where you search the trunk and find nothing and let me drive away. Except this time, you won't let me drive away. This time you'll try to stop it." Behind her, the fire illuminated the fog in shades of orange that should have been dancing, but instead held perfectly still. I watched the flames for 15 seconds of playback without seeing a single natural flicker. The fire existed in a state of frozen combustion, as if someone had photographed an explosion and projected it as a still image onto the darkness. Reed's confusion bled into his voice. "Ma'am, there's been a collision behind you. Are you injured? Were you involved in that accident?" Sophia's expression shifted, something like sadness crossing her face before settling back into unnatural calm. "Not yet," she said quietly. "Not yet what?" Reed pressed, his free hand moving toward his radio. "Not yet injured," Sophia answered. "That happens after you let me go. After you finish searching my trunk and finding my suitcase and road atlas and the blanket that doesn't match any evidence you'll log later. After you clear me and watch me drive north toward the bend. That's when I get injured." Reed keyed his radio, eyes never leaving Sophia. "Dispatch, this is Unit 2847. I need backup at mile marker 7, Blackwood Forest Road. Possible 10 to 50 with disoriented subject at scene. Request fire response as well." The radio crackled acknowledgement. Reed lowered it but kept his flashlight trained on Sophia. "I need you to move to the shoulder. Step away from the center of the lane." Sophia shook her head slowly. "If I move, it accelerates. The timing has to stay exactly the same, or everything happens faster and I don't make it to 231. I have to stay here until you ask about the trunk. That's the rule." "What rule?" Reed demanded. "Who told you?" He stopped mid-sentence. When his flashlight beam swept back to where Sophia had been standing, she was no longer there. She was closer now, 10 feet from his position, illuminated by the patrol car's headlights instead of his flashlight, wearing an expression that looked less like calm and more like resignation. "Now you're going to ask about the trunk," Sophia said softly. "Just like you always do." I played the file 3 more times that night, documenting timestamps and dialogue in a spreadsheet that was starting to look less like evidence analysis and more like the obsessive notation of someone trying to prove their own sanity. On the 4th viewing, I noticed Sophia's jacket had changed again. The first time I watched, it was gray. The second time, dark green. Now it was black with a tear along the left sleeve that exposed pale skin underneath. Same woman, same road, same impossible fire frozen in the background. But the details kept shifting like someone was adjusting variables in a simulation and forgetting to maintain consistency between iterations. I stopped the playback at 2 hours, 18 minutes, and 47 seconds and checked the file properties again. Last modified, November 3rd, 2024, 23:04, the exact moment I had first opened it. No prior access logs, no edit history, no restoration attempts showing in the system metadata. According to every technical indicator available, this file had remained untouched and unchanged for 21 years until I restored it 6 hours ago. But Sophia Bennett's clothing was different in every viewing. I rewound to 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 33 seconds and played it again, this time watching only her, not the officer's movements or the dialogue or the burning wreckage behind her. Just Sophia standing in a road, and the small details that should have remained constant but didn't. Her hair was dry in the first viewing. Now it was damp, dark strands clinging to her cheeks like she had walked through rain that existed nowhere else in the frame. The asphalt around her was wet. The officer's boots splashed through shallow puddles. But Sophia's hair was the only element showing active moisture beyond ambient fog. I advanced frame by frame through her initial appearance. At 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 44 seconds, her shoes were clean, dark sneakers without visible wear. At 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 51 seconds, during the next cut, mud caked the sides and laces, thick enough to suggest she had been walking through forest soil rather than standing on paved road. The evidence logs confirmed what I already knew made no sense. File integrity check, passed. Hash verification, matched original. Chain of custody, unbroken. Every technical safeguard designed to detect tampering or modification showed the file was exactly as it had been recorded in 2003, byte for byte identical to the original digital capture. But Sophia Bennett's appearance was changing every time I watched her. I opened the frame-by-frame analysis tool and began scrubbing through the footage one frame at a time, watching for the exact moment when details shifted. At normal playback speed, the changes were subtle enough to dismiss as memory error or attention failure. But advancing frame by frame made the impossibility undeniable. Frame 1847. Sophia's jacket is black. Frame 1848. Sophia's jacket is dark gray. Frame 1849. Sophia's jacket is black again, but the tear in the sleeve has moved from left to right. No transition between states. No blur or distortion indicating post-production manipulation. The details simply existed differently between consecutive frames, as if the footage was being rewritten in real time during playback. I rewound to the point where Lieutenant Reed first approached her and let it play at half speed. Sophia stood motionless in the center of the lane while Reed's voice came through asking if she was injured. Her lips moved, forming the words, "Not yet," as they had in every previous viewing. But this time, as the footage rewound automatically to buffer the next segment, Sophia's expression changed. She smiled, not the sad resignation from earlier scenes. A genuine smile directed at something above and slightly to the left of Reed's position. Directed at the dashcam. Directed at whoever was watching this footage decades after it was recorded. The smile held for 3 frames during the rewind, then disappeared when playback resumed forward motion. I felt cold spread across my shoulders despite the office heat running at its normal 72 degrees. The sensation of being watched crawled up my spine, not the vague paranoia of working alone in an empty building at midnight, but the specific certainty that someone was observing me with the same attention I was giving to this footage. I checked behind my chair. Empty office, dark hallway beyond the open door, nothing but the hum of servers in the room next door and rain against windows. I was alone in the record division like I had been for the past 6 hours. But the feeling persisted. I returned to the footage and advanced to the moment where Reed asked Sophia about the trunk. She responded with her usual anticipation of questions he hadn't asked yet. But as the camera angle shifted slightly with Reed's movement, Sophia's eyes tracked not his position, but the dashcam lens itself. She was watching the camera, had been watching it this entire time, not as a passive subject being recorded, but as someone actively aware of observation and responding to it. I exported the frame where her smile appeared during rewind and enhanced the image. Her face filled my monitor in grainy 2003-era dashcam resolution, pixelated but clear enough to see her expression was neither threatening nor afraid. She looked relieved, like someone had been waiting a very long time for another person to finally notice what she had been trying to show them. My office phone rang, the internal line from the main records desk 3 floors down. I answered it at 1:17 in the morning, expecting a security check-in. "Noah, it's Marcus downstairs." The night records clerk sounded uncomfortable. "Did you flag case tape 110012 for multi-analyst review?" "No," I said. "Why?" "Because 3 different people accessed it remotely in the past hour, all from archive terminals, all requesting the same restoration you completed tonight." He paused. "Problem is, 2 of those terminals haven't been active in 15 years. And the 3rd one was decommissioned in 2006. I pulled up the access logs on my second monitor. He was right. 3 separate restoration attempts, all successful, all accessing the file simultaneously from stations that should have been offline or destroyed years ago. "Marcus, who else is in the building right now?" "Just you and me," he replied. "Everyone else went home at 6. I looked back at my primary monitor where the footage was still paused on Sophia's smile. As I watched, her lips moved, formed a single word without sound, clear enough to read even in the degraded image quality. Again, the phone went dead in my hand. Every light in the records division cut out simultaneously, leaving me in absolute darkness broken only by the glow of my monitors showing Sophia Bennett's face watching me from 21 years in the past. And from somewhere in the building, distant enough that I couldn't identify direction, but close enough to hear clearly, a woman's voice spoke 2 words. "Not yet." The lights came back on 40 seconds later with a mechanical click that echoed through the empty records division. My monitors flickered, the footage still frozen on Sophia's face forming that silent word. I saved the session, backed up the file to 3 separate drives, and returned to the playback. This time, I jumped ahead to 2 hours, 21 minutes, and 15 seconds, past the initial encounter, to the moment where Lieutenant Reed decided to deviate from standard procedure. His voice came through tense, authoritative in the way officers sound when they're trying to reassert control over situations slipping away from them. "Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to step to the shoulder and away from the roadway. This isn't a request." Sophia remained motionless in the center of the lane, her eyes, brown in this viewing, though I could have sworn they were darker before, fixed on something past Reed's shoulder, past a patrol car, past the dash cam. "If I move, it happens faster," she said quietly. "The timing has to stay exactly the same. Every word, every step, every second has to match, or the interval collapses and I don't make it to 2:31. "Make it to what?" Reed pressed. "What happens at 2:31? "You let me go," Sophia answered. "You finish searching my trunk, finding nothing like you always do, and you clear me from the stop. I drive north. At 2:38, I reach the bend. At 2:42, the other car comes around too fast and crosses the center line. At 2:43, I'm dead in the wreckage you see burning behind me right now." Reed's flashlight beam wavered slightly. "That fire is already burning. If what you're saying is true, that accident has already happened." "It has," Sophia agreed. "And it hasn't. Time here doesn't work the way you think it does. The accident is always burning, always about to happen, always 15 minutes away, no matter how long this stop lasts." She finally looked directly at Reed instead of past him. "I was driving home from my sister's house in Millbrook. I took Blackwood Forest Road because it's faster than the highway, and I was tired. It was raining. The road was slick. When I saw your lights behind me, I pulled over at 2:16, right here at mile marker 7. Her voice softened, fragments of memory surfacing like debris from shipwreck. "You asked for my license. I gave it to you. You asked where I was going. I told you home. You asked if I'd been drinking. I said no. You said you'd clocked me at 78 in a 65. I said I didn't realize that I was just tired and want to get home." Reed listened without interrupting, his body language shifting from procedural authority to something closer to uncomfortable attention. "Then you asked about the trunk," Sophia continued. "I said you could search it. You found my overnight bag and some road maps and the emergency blanket I could keep for winter breakdowns. You gave me a warning. You told me to drive safe and get some rest. I thanked you. I got back in my car and drove north toward the bend." She paused, moisture gathering at the corners of her eyes, the first genuine emotion I had seen break through her supernatural calm. "I made it about 2 miles before the other car came around the curve. The driver was drunk, found out later from the autopsy report. He crossed in my lane doing 60. I swerved right, lost control on the wet pavement. The car left the road and hit a tree. The impact ruptured the fuel line. Fire started immediately. And you died," Reed said quietly. "I died," Sophia confirmed. "But something broke when it happened. Some rule about how time moves forward. Now I'm stuck in the minutes before, living them over and over, watching you pull me over and search my trunk and let me go. Except it's not just you anymore. There have been others." Reed's confusion showed on his face even in the limited dashcam angle. "Others. Other officers," Sophia said. "Different badges, different faces, but the same stop at the same time in the same place. You're the 17th. Each one thinks they're pulling me over for the first time. Each one finds nothing in the trunk. Each one lets me drive away toward the collision that's already burning 50 yards behind me." "That's impossible," Reed stated, though his voice carried no conviction. "You'll check your records later," Sophia told him. "You'll find the incident report from the night I died. April 19th, 2003, at 2:43 hours. Single vehicle fatal collision, Blackwood Forest Road, mile marker 9. Driver identified as Sophia Bennett. You responded to that call, Lieutenant Reed. You documented the scene. You were the one who found me." Reed's hand moved to his radio, hesitated, then dropped back to his side. "If that's true, if you died that night, then what are you?" "An echo," Sophia answered. "A recording of the last conversation I had before the fire. The universe trying to prevent something that already happened by replaying the moments before over and over. But it can't be prevented. The collision is inevitable. The best I can do is delay it by staying here, keeping the stop going, stretching out these 15 minutes across infinite repetitions. She took a half step forward, the first voluntary movement I had seen her make. You're going to promise me now that you'll stop it, that you'll arrest me or disable my car, or do whatever it takes to keep me from driving away. You'll tell me I'm safe, that this time will be different. Reed straightened, his professional authority returning. I can help you. I can call for medical evaluation, get you protective custody until we figure out what's happening here. You always say that, Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible over the ambient sound of idling engines and distant fire. Every single one of you promises you'll stop it, and every single time I drive away anyway. Because the loop won't let you save me. It only lets you watch me die again and again and again. Behind her, the frozen fire suddenly moved. Not flickering, but jumping forward several frames at once, as if time had skipped ahead while the dashcam kept recording at normal speed. When the image stabilized, Sophia was closer to the patrol car again, and she was smiling sadly at Lieutenant Reed, with an expression that suggested she already knew exactly how this would end. I left the footage running on my primary monitor and turned to the offline archives, the physical records that predated full digitization, stored in bankers' boxes in the climate control vault 2 floors below. If Sophia Bennett died on April 19, 2003, there should be paper documentation that couldn't be altered by whatever was affecting the digital file. The vault access log showed I was the first person to enter in 6 days. I descended the concrete stairs with my credentials in a growing sense that I was about to find something that explained why case tape 110012 had been deliberately corrupted and buried for 21 years. The 2003 incident reports were filed chronologically in boxes marked by month. I found April and carried it to the scanning station, flipping through reports until I reached the 19th. Traffic citations, domestic disturbances, vandalism complaints, routine calls documented in triplicate on carbon copy forms that had been standard before the department transitioned to digital reporting in 2005. I found Lieutenant Reed's traffic stop report at 2:17 hours. Blackwood Forest Road, mile marker 7. Vehicle stopped, silver Honda Accord. Driver, Sophia Bennett, DOB March 14, 1972. Valid operator's license. Reason for stop: speed violation, clocked at 78 and posted 65 zone. Search conducted. Negative findings. Disposition: verbal warning issued. Driver released at 2:31 hours. Standard documentation. Nothing unusual except the timing matched perfectly with the dashcam footage I had been watching all night. But stapled behind Reed's traffic stop report was a second incident form I almost missed. Different paper stock, different form revision, dated 2 months earlier on February 11, 2003. The header read, unattended vehicle / possible abandonment. Location: Blackwood Forest Road, mile marker 7.5. Reporting officer: Lieutenant Marcus Reed, badge 2847. Vehicle description: silver Honda Accord, severe fire damage, VIN destroyed beyond recovery. The narrative section was brief and procedural. Responded to report of smoking vehicle on shoulder. Fire had self-extinguished prior to arrival. Vehicle interior completely consumed. No occupants located at scene or in surrounding area. Extensive search conducted with negative results. Vehicle towed to impound for investigation. The disposition was marked unresolved with a note added in different handwriting. See addendum file 2003-047. I searched the box for the addendum reference. It wasn't there. I checked the index sheet taped inside the box lid. A 2003-047 was listed but marked with a red stamp. Sealed / restricted access. Sealed files required supervisor authorization. But at 2:34 in the morning, I was the only supervisor in the building. I located the sealed files cabinet in the vault's back corner, a fireproof unit that required 2 keys to open. I used my master access and the emergency override I wasn't supposed to know about, but that every senior analyst learned within their first year. The cabinet opened with a pressurized hiss, revealing 3 dozen manila envelopes arranged by year. A 2003-047 was thicker than the others, bulging with contents that created an irregular shape inside the envelope. I carried it to the scanning station and opened it carefully, half expecting the contents to disintegrate after 2 decades of storage. Inside were 37 pages of documentation that should have been part of the official investigation but had been removed and sealed instead. The first page was a supplemental report filed by Lieutenant Reed on February 14, 2003, 3 days after discovering the burned vehicle. His writing was less composed than the initial report, paragraphs dense with details that suggested someone trying to document something they couldn't fully explain. Return to scene at 1400 hours to conduct daylight examination. Located additional evidence approximately 50 yards north of vehicle position. Personal effects scattered in roadway, including damaged wallet containing driver's license for Sophia Bennett. DOB March 14, 1972, address 418, Maple Court, Ridgemont. License showed no fire damage despite being found near burned vehicle. Photograph attached to license showed female, matching general description, but no body or remains located during initial response. The next page was a follow-up dated February 18th. Attempted contact with Sophia Bennett at listed address. Residence occupied by different tenants who stated previous occupant moved out approximately 4 months prior. Landlord unable to provide forwarding information. DMV records show license still active with no change of address filed. Employer contact, Ridgemont Public Library, states Bennett called in sick on February 10th and has not reported for shift since. No missing persons report filed by family or associates. I flipped through witness statement from a gas station attendant who claimed to have seen a silver Honda Accord with a woman matching Sophia's description purchasing coffee at 1:47 hours on February 11th. 30 minutes before Lieutenant Reed found the burned vehicle on Blackwood Forest Road. Another statement from a tow truck driver who helped transport the wreckage described finding the driver's seat positioned as if someone had been sitting in it when the fire started, but no remains or biological evidence present in the ash. The forensic analysis came next, stamped inconclusive in red across the top. Fire pattern consistent with fuel line rupture and subsequent interior combustion. Duration estimated 15 to 20 minutes based on material consumption. However, thermal damage inconsistent with presence of human remains. No bone fragments, dental evidence, or biological material recovered from vehicle interior despite conditions that should have preserved such evidence. The final pages were interdepartmental correspondence between Lieutenant Reed and the district captain, each message more frustrated than the last. Reed pushing for expanded investigation. The captain responding with budget constraints and lack of evidence, supporting continued resource allocation. The exchange ended on March 3rd with a memo marked case closed/unresolved. Insufficient evidence to determine if criminal activity occurred. Vehicle registered to Sophia Bennett presumed stolen and burned by unknown parties. Bennett's whereabouts remain unknown, but no evidence suggests foul play. Case to remain open pending new information. But that wasn't the end of the file. Clipped to the back of the correspondence was a single photograph, color faded with age, but clear enough to show what had been captured. The image showed Blackwood Forest Road at night, red and blue emergency lights visible in the background. In the foreground, standing in the center of a yellow dividing line, was a woman in jeans and a gray jacket. Sophia Bennett. Photographed at the scene on February 11th, 2003. But according to every official report, no one was present when Lieutenant Reed arrived. I turned the photograph over. Written on the back in Reed's handwriting. Subject appeared in patrol car headlights at 2:17 hours. Disappeared when I exited vehicle to make contact. Not captured on dashcam footage. This photograph, taken with personal camera before equipment malfunction, cannot explain presence or disappearance. Recommend case remains sealed. Beneath that, in different handwriting, block capitals written with heavy pressure, someone had added a final note. Do not digitize. Do not discuss. Bury this. I checked the evidence log again. The burned Honda Accord had been discovered on February 11th. Lieutenant Reed conducted the traffic stop with Sophia Bennett on April 19th, 67 days later. But the dashcam footage showed the burning car behind Sophia during the April stop, showed flames that had supposedly extinguished themselves 2 months earlier, still burning in perpetual frozen combustion while Sophia stood in the road, explaining she would die in 15 minutes. The timeline made no sense. Unless Sophia wasn't pulled over after her death. She was pulled over during it. Over and over. February 11th, April 19th, and perhaps dozens of other nights that were never documented or were buried in files I hadn't found yet. Each stop happening simultaneously. Time folding back on itself at mile marker 7, where something had broken causality badly enough that a woman could die and continue dying across multiple encounters that all occurred at 2:17 hours regardless of what date the calendar claimed. I photographed every page of the sealed file, uploaded them to my encrypted backup, and returned the envelope to the cabinet. But I kept the photograph, slipped it into my jacket pocket where it pressed against my chest like evidence of something I still didn't fully understand but knew I couldn't ignore. Back in my office, the dashcam footage had advanced on its own to 2 hours, 29 minutes, and 41 seconds. Sophia stood beside her Honda Accord while Lieutenant Reed inspected her trunk, finding nothing suspicious just as she had promised. In 90 seconds, he would clear her from the stop and watch her drive north toward a collision that was simultaneously burning 50 yards behind them and waiting 2 miles ahead. I looked at the photograph again. Sophia's face captured in emergency lights, expression calm and resigned. She wasn't listed as dead in any official record. She wasn't listed as missing. She had simply been erased from documentation, removed from files, buried in sealed archives where her existence became a bureaucratic ghost haunting evidence that was never meant to be reviewed. And now I understood why the dashcam footage kept changing. Because Sophia Bennett wasn't just trapped in a loop. She was trapped in every version of her death simultaneously, replaying them all at once. Visible only to whoever was watching carefully enough to see the details shift between viewings. On my monitor, Lieutenant Reed closed Sophia's trunk and returned to his patrol car to complete the citation paperwork. Sophia turned slowly and looked directly at the dashcam. Directly at me, and mouthed 2 words I could read clearly despite the lack of audio at that moment. Help me. I advanced the footage to 2 hours, 30 minutes, and 18 seconds, past the trunk search, past the point where Lieutenant Reed should have returned to his patrol car to complete the citation. But this viewing showed something different, something that hadn't been there in any previous playback. Reed didn't return to his vehicle. Instead, he walked back to where Sophia stood beside her Honda Accord, her posture suggesting she was preparing to get back in and drive away. His voice came through the dashcam audio with new determination, the tone of an officer who had made a decision that deviated from protocol. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. Step behind the patrol car, please." Sophia's head snapped toward him, her calm expression fracturing into something close to fear. No, you can't change this part. The order has to stay the same. I'm not comfortable letting you drive in your current state," Reed continued, his hand gesturing toward the patrol car. "I'm going to call for a supervisor and medical evaluation. Just step behind the vehicle where it's safe." "Safe?" Sophia's voice rose, panic bleeding through for the first time. "There is no safe. Don't you understand? If you change the order, if you move me from where I'm supposed to be, the timing collapses. Everything happens faster." Reed moved closer, his flashlight still raised. "Ma'am, I need you to comply. Step behind my vehicle. Now." Behind Sophia, the frozen fire suddenly roared to life. The flames that had remained motionless for the entire encounter surged upward with a sound like tearing metal amplified through a megaphone. The fire didn't spread naturally. It expanded in all directions at once, engulfing more of the wreckage instantaneously, burning with an intensity that cast harsh shadows across the fog-shrouded road. Sophia stumbled backward, away from her vehicle, her eyes wide. "You're changing it," she gasped. "You're breaking the sequence. That's worse. That's so much worse than just letting me go." Reed caught her arm gently but firmly, guiding her toward the patrol car. You're not driving anywhere until we figure out what's happening here. Come on. He positioned her behind the open driver's door of his cruiser, using the vehicle as a barrier between her and the road. Sophia gripped the doorframe with both hands, her knuckles white, her breathing rapid and shallow. "The crash happens at 2:42, she said frantically. "But if I'm not in position, if I'm not in my car driving north, then when does it happen? Where does the other car go if I'm not there to hit?" "What other car?" Reed demanded. "The drunk driver," Sophia said, her voice breaking. "The one who crosses the center line at the bend 2 miles north. The one who causes the collision. If I'm not there, if you stop me here, then where does his momentum go? What does he hit instead?" A sound emerged from the fog to the north. Distant at first, barely audible over the roar of the flames. An engine running at high speed, the pitch rising as it approached. No headlights visible yet through the dense fog, just the sound of a vehicle moving too fast on a wet road with no awareness of the patrol car and stopped vehicle ahead. Reed's head turned toward the sound, his body tensing. "Dispatch, this is Unit 2847. I need backup now. Possible 10 to 79 approaching my location. High speed." The engine's sound grew louder. Closer. Sophia's grip on the doorframe tightened. "It's not supposed to happen here," she whispered. "The collision is supposed to happen at mile marker 9. At the bend. Not here. Not with you still present. This isn't how it goes." Headlights broke through the fog, twin beams cutting erratic paths through the darkness, the vehicle behind them weaving slightly as it approached the scene. The driver showed no signs of reducing speed despite the emergency lights visible ahead. Reed stepped away from Sophia, moving toward the center of the road, one hand raised in a stopping gesture, the other reaching for his flashlight. "State police. Slow down. Stop your vehicle." The approaching car didn't slow. The headlights grew brighter, larger, the engine's sound becoming a scream of poorly maintained machinery pushed beyond safe limits. Through the fog, I could make out the shape now. A dark sedan, fishtailing slightly on the wet pavement. The driver either unable or unwilling to respond to Reed's commands. "Get down," Reed shouted, diving toward the shoulder. The drunk driver's car entered the frame at 2 hours, 31 minutes, and 4 seconds. Nearly 11 minutes earlier than Sophia had said the collision should occur. It hydroplaned on the slick asphalt, the rear end swinging wide, the vehicle rotating as it lost traction and control. The sound of the impact happened off-camera, somewhere beyond the dashcam's field of view. Metal tearing, glass exploding in sharp crystalline bursts, the deep bass thump of velocity meeting immovable object. The patrol car shook from the concussion wave. Then came the fire. Not gradual ignition building from sparks to flames, but instant combustion that erupted with a sound like a thunderclap. Orange light flooded the fog, turning the gray mist into a churning mass of amber and shadow. The heat was visible in the way the dashcam image distorted, pixels fragmenting at the edges where thermal waves interfered with the lens. Reed scrambled to his feet, radio in hand, screaming into it about officer needs assistance and fire and collision. He ran toward where the sound had come from, his flashlight beam disappearing into the fog and flame light. The dashcam continued recording his empty patrol car, the open driver's door, the position where Sophia had been standing gripping the doorframe just seconds ago. I rewound 3 seconds, watched Reed dive for the shoulder, watched the approaching headlights, watched the moment of impact, watched the exact frame where Reed turned his attention from Sophia to the oncoming vehicle. When I advanced the playback forward again, frame by frame, I caught the moment of transition. Frame 4847, Sophia visible behind the patrol car door, both hands gripping the frame. Frame 4848, Sophia's hands still visible, but her body beginning to fade, becoming translucent. Frame 4849, only her hands remained, ghostly impressions against the metal door frame. Frame 4850, empty space. No Sophia, just the open door and the fog and the distant fire consuming whatever the drunk driver had hit when he arrived 11 minutes too early. Reed's voice came through the radio, fractured and desperate. "Dispatch. I need fire response. I need ambulance. I need..." Static interrupted him. "Two vehicles fully involved. I have one civilian who was more static. She was right here. I had her behind my vehicle, and now..." The transmission cut off completely. On my monitor, the timestamp flickered, changed from 2 hours, 31 minutes and 4 seconds to 2 hours, 17 minutes and 33 seconds. The footage reset to the beginning of the encounter. Sophia stood in the center of the road again, calm and waiting, wearing a jacket I hadn't seen in any previous viewing, dark blue this time, with no visible damage. And when Lieutenant Reed's patrol car door opened and his boots hit the wet asphalt, Sophia turned her head slightly and looked directly at the dash cam with an expression that somehow combined accusation and desperate pleading. As if she knew someone was watching. As if she knew someone had just seen what happens when you try to change the order. As if she was begging whoever was watching to understand that some deaths can't be prevented, only endlessly repeated. The distant fire behind her burned in frozen stillness once more, waiting for the next attempt, waiting for the next failure, waiting for time to fold back on itself again at 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 33 seconds on a fog-bound road where causality had shattered 21 years ago and never properly healed. I let the footage play forward from the reset, watching Lieutenant Reed approach Sophia for what the dashcam recorded as the first time, but what I now understood was an iteration impossible to number. The encounter proceeded exactly as before. The questions, the anticipation, the trunk search that found nothing. But at 2 hours, 29 minutes and 52 seconds, as Reed returned to his patrol car to complete the citation, the audio began to distort. Static crept in at the edges of his voice, a low-frequency interference that hadn't been present in previous viewings. The distortion grew worse as he keyed his radio to clear the stop with dispatch. His words became fragmented, individual syllables separated by bursts of white noise that sounded almost like breathing. Then backup sirens emerged in the distance. Not the approaching wail of units responding to Reed's earlier call for assistance, but sirens that seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, layered over each other in discordant harmony. Some close, some far, all of them converging on mile marker 7 from impossible directions. Reed's head turned toward the sound, confusion evident in his posture. "Dispatch, I didn't request backup. Who's responding to my location?" The radio crackled, but produced no coherent response. Just static punctuated by fragments of voices that might have been dispatch or might have been something else entirely. That's when Sophia's whisper came through the dashcam audio. Impossibly close. Not transmitted through distance, but spoken directly into the microphone despite her standing 20 feet away beside her vehicle. The whisper bypassed physics entirely, intimate and clear as if she were leaning against the camera itself. "You can't save me," she said softly. Reed spun toward her, but Sophia hadn't moved. Still stood beside her Honda Accord, arms at her sides, expression calm. "You're not pulling me over," the whisper continued, closer now, almost inside my headphones as I listened in my office at 3:47 in the morning. "You're not stopping a driver. You're not preventing an accident." The dashcam image began to glitch. Pixels fragmenting at the edges, the video feed stuttering between frames, showing Sophia in multiple positions simultaneously, standing by her car, walking toward the camera, already at the patrol car looking directly into the lens. "You're arriving," Sophia whispered. "You arrive at 2:17 every time because that's when the loop needs a witness. Someone to document what happened. Someone to try to stop it and fail and confirm that it can't be stopped." Her face filled the frame suddenly, impossibly close despite the camera being mounted on Reed's dashboard 20 feet from where she should be standing. Her eyes, brown or gray or green, depending on the frame, looked directly through the lens with an intensity that made my chest tighten. "I'm not alive, Lieutenant," she said, her voice no longer a whisper, but clear and direct. "I died on February 11th when my car hit the tree. Or I died on April 19th when the drunk driver crossed the line. Or, I died on 17 other nights when 17 other versions of this stop ended the same way. All of them happening simultaneously. All of them true. All of them recorded in this footage that keeps changing because you're not watching one event. You're watching all of them collapsed into the same 15 minutes. The camera glitched violently, the image tearing vertically, Sophia's face fragmenting into parallel versions of herself, speaking the same words at slightly different intervals. The stop isn't prevention, she continued, her voice layering over itself in dissonant harmony. It's arrival. You arrive at the moment of my death and document it, and try to save me and fail because I'm already gone. I've been gone for 21 years. What you're talking to, what you're watching, is an echo. A recording of the last conversation I had before the fire took me. And it plays over and over because someone buried the evidence instead of understanding it. Because someone marked this file corrupted and sealed it away where it could repeat forever without anyone seeing what was really captured. Behind her fragmented faces, Lieutenant Reed stumbled backward, his mouth open in a scream that came through the audio as pure distortion. No words. Just the sound of vocal cords vibrating at frequencies that shouldn't be possible for human anatomy. The backup sirens reached a crescendo, all converging at once, the sound so loud it peaked the audio levels and caused the speakers in my office to crackle with overload. Sophia's expression shifted. Not calm anymore. Not resigned. Something closer to desperate urgency. The file knows it's being watched, she said, her multiple voices synchronizing into a single clear statement. And now it knows who's watching. It knows. The screen cut to black mid-sentence. Not a fade, not a gradual loss of signal. A complete, instantaneous termination of video and audio at 2 hours, 30 minutes, and 47 seconds. The timestamp disappeared. The playback controls froze. My office fell silent except for my own breathing and the hum of servers in the next room and the sound of rain against windows that seemed suddenly much louder than it should be. I stared at the black screen for 10 seconds before reaching for my mouse to restart the playback. My hand froze halfway to the keyboard, because in the black reflection on my monitor screen, behind my own face looking back at me, I could see someone standing in my office doorway. A woman in a jacket that might have been gray or green or blue, depending on how the light caught it. Standing perfectly still, watching me with the patient expression of someone who had been waiting 21 years for me to finally understand what I had opened. I didn't turn around, kept my eyes locked on the black screen and the reflection that couldn't possibly be there because I was alone in the records division and the security logs would have shown any entry after Marcus left at midnight. The reflection didn't move, didn't speak, just stood in the doorway with that impossible patience. I closed my eyes, counted to 5, and looked again. The doorway was empty. My hands were shaking badly enough that it took 3 attempts to pull up Lieutenant Reed's personnel file. I needed to know what happened to him after April 19th, 2003. Needed confirmation that I wasn't the first person this file had affected. Reed had submitted a transfer request on April 22nd, 3 days after the dashcam encounter. Approved immediately despite being mid-contract year when transfers typically required 6 months' notice. His new assignment was duty in the evidence warehouse, a position that kept him off patrol permanently. He retired early in 2006, 2 years before pension eligibility, citing medical reasons that weren't specified in the public record. I dug deeper, accessing medical leave documentation that should have been restricted. Reed had filed for psychiatric evaluation in May 2003, reporting persistent insomnia, intrusive thoughts, and what the examining physician described as acute temporal disorientation. Patient reports difficulty determining whether events are occurring in present or past tense. The physician's notes continued. Patient exhibits obsessive time-checking behavior, verifying clock accuracy multiple times per hour. Reports intense anxiety when driving in fog or rain. Describes recurring nightmare in which he arrives at accident scene repeatedly, but victim changes position each time he approaches. Recommend immediate removal from active patrol duty. 3 other officers were listed in the related file section. I opened each one. Officer Sarah Chun transferred to desk duty August 2007 after requesting never to work night shifts again. Her medical records mentioned severe weather-related PTSD and persistent sensation of being observed while alone. Officer Robert Kimball resigned entirely in 2011. Exit interview notes. States he can no longer trust dashcam footage as reliable evidence. Reports seeing details and recordings that other officers don't observe. Believes equipment is malfunctioning across entire fleet. Officer Jennifer Hayes, still active but reassigned to Training Division. Her file contained a formal complaint she'd filed in 2015 about case tape 110012 specifically, requesting be permanently deleted rather than archived. The complaint was denied with a note. File already corrupted beyond recovery. No action necessary. But the file wasn't corrupted. It had opened perfectly for me. I checked the access logs again, scrolling back further than I had before, looking for every instance of someone attempting to view case tape 110012 since its creation in 2003. 17 access attempts. 17 different analysts or officers over 21 years, each one opening the file, each one marking it corrupted immediately after viewing, each one requesting transfer or extended leave within days of access. I opened the metadata file, the hidden technical documentation that tracked every interaction with the evidence. Buried in the code were marginal notes, comments left by previous viewers that weren't supposed to be possible in a locked evidence file. Don't watch more than once. Each viewing changes it. M. Reed, 2003. The woman in the footage knows she's being recorded. She reacts differently depending on who's watching. S. Chun, 2007. Tom is at work right in this file. The timestamp lies. R. Kimball, 2011. I saw her in my house. Not on screen. In my house. Standing in the hallway watching me sleep. When I woke up fully, she was gone, but I could still smell smoke. J. Hayes, 2015. The most recent note was dated 2019. To whoever opens this next, she's not trapped in the footage. The footage is trapped in her. We're not watching a recording. We're watching through it. Stop before she watches back. My office suddenly felt smaller. The walls closer. The shadows and corners deeper than they should be under fluorescent lighting. I checked my computer system clock. 4:12 a.m. I looked away to reach for my coffee. When I looked back at the clock, 2:17 a.m. Impossible. I've been working for hours. It was early morning, nearly dawn. The clock couldn't read 2:17. I checked my phone. 4:13 a.m. Looked back at my computer. 2:17 a.m. The monitor displaying the dashcam file flickered back to life without me touching anything. The playback had resumed on its own, footage rolling forward from the beginning of the encounter. Sophia, standing in the road. Reed approaching. The frozen fire burning behind her. But the timestamp in the corner of the dashcam feed no longer read 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 33 seconds. It read 4 hours, 13 minutes, and 58 seconds. The current time. The footage was no longer showing April 19th, 2003. It was showing now. And as I watched, Sophia slowly turned away from Lieutenant Reed's approaching flashlight beam and looked directly at the dashcam. Directly at me. Her lips moved, forming words without audio. You kept watching. The file's timestamp advanced. 4 hours, 14 minutes, and 1 second. 4 hours, 14 minutes, and 2 seconds. 4 hours, 14 minutes, and 3 seconds. Real time. Behind Sophia, the frozen fire began to move. Not burning naturally, but spreading in reverse. Flames pulling back toward their source, consuming space as they retreated until they reached the wreckage and then continued past it, extending down the road toward where the dashcam was mounted, toward where I was sitting. The footage showed the fire flowing forward along the wet asphalt like liquid, following the yellow center line, getting closer to the camera position with each advancing frame. My office smelled like smoke. I yanked the network cable from my computer, severing the connection to the server where case tape 110012 was stored. The playback froze mid-frame. Sophia's face locked in that knowing expression, the fire suspended in its impossible reverse flow. The smoke smell didn't dissipate. I left the office, walked down 3 flights of stairs in darkness because I couldn't bring myself to wait for the elevator, and stood in the parking lot in the rain for 20 minutes trying to convince myself that what I'd experienced was fatigue-induced hallucination. Stress. Too many hours reviewing corrupted files in an empty building. But I documented everything. Screenshots, exported frames, notes time-stamped and saved to external drives. Evidence that couldn't be dismissed as imagination. I returned to my office at 6:30 after the sun rose, after other analysts arrived for their shifts, after the building filled with enough normal human activity to make the supernatural feel impossible again. The file was still there, paused where I'd left it. I should have marked it corrupted like the 17 analysts before me. Should have buried it deeper, added my own warning to the metadata, transferred to a different department where I'd never have to think about Blackwood Forest Road or Sophia Bennett or dashcam footage that changed each time you watched it. Instead, I opened it one final time. The timestamp had changed again. Not 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 33 seconds like the original encounter. Not 4 hours, 13 minutes, and 58 seconds like the real-time synchronization from hours ago. 2 hours and 16 minutes. 1 minute earlier than every previous viewing. The footage began playing automatically. Same fog-bound road. Same red and blue emergency lights. Same patrol car positioned behind a stopped vehicle. But Sophia wasn't standing in her usual spot at mile marker 7. She was farther north, closer to the bend she'd mentioned repeatedly, the place where the drunk driver would cross the center line and cause the collision that killed her. The loop was tightening, moving backward through time, claiming ground, pulling the encounter closer to the inevitable endpoint. Lieutenant Reed's door opened. His boots hit the wet asphalt. But before his flashlight beam could sweep across the road, before he could take his first step toward the stopped vehicle, Sophia was already looking at the camera, not turning to look, not reacting to being filmed, already staring directly into the dashcam lens, as if she'd been waiting for playback to begin, as if she existed in the footage aware that decades would pass before someone would watch this moment, and she positioned herself perfectly to be seen by whoever finally opened the file. Her expression wasn't calm anymore, wasn't resigned or pleading or desperate. She looked tired. Tired in the way someone gets after repeating the same doomed pattern for 21 years. Watching 17 different officers try to save her. Watching 17 different analysts review the footage looking for answers, knowing that none of it mattered because the road had claimed her that first night and wouldn't let her go. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the screen, though I didn't know why I was apologizing or what I thought it would accomplish. Sophia's lips moved in the frozen frame, forming words I could read clearly now. Remember me. Not save me. Not help me. Remember me. I closed the file and marked it the same way everyone else had. Corrupted / do not restore. But I kept the photograph from a sealed archive. The one showing Sophia standing in the road on February 11th, 2003, captured by Lieutenant Reed's personal camera before the equipment malfunctioned. Proof that she'd been real, that she'd existed, that her death had happened and been documented and then deliberately buried by people who couldn't understand what they were seeing. I think I understand now what the file really is. It's not evidence of crime. It's not documentation of a traffic stop gone wrong or a collision that broke causality. It's a memorial, a recording that refuses to let Sophia Bennett fade into obscurity, that forces anyone who opens it to witness her death repeatedly until they either look away or become part of the pattern themselves. Some evidence doesn't document crimes. It waits for someone to see what really happened, waits for someone to remember the victim before bureaucracy and time erased them completely, waits for someone to understand that being buried in archives and marked corrupted is its own kind of death, one that happens slowly, administratively, with forms and stamps and file cabinets instead of fire and collision. Sophia Bennett died on Blackwood Forest Road 21 years ago, but she's still there at mile marker 7, standing in fog that never clears, watching emergency lights that never stop flashing, waiting for the next person to open case tape 110012 and see her face one more time before the loop resets, and she dies again at 2:42 or 2:38 or whatever timestamp the road has moved her death to by then. She isn't waiting to be saved. Saving her was never possible. She's waiting to be remembered by someone, anyone, before the file gets buried so deep that even the echoes stop reaching forward through time. Before the road takes the last piece of evidence that she was ever there at all. I keep the photograph in my desk drawer. Look at it sometimes when I'm working late and the building gets too quiet. Sophia, standing in emergency lights, wearing a gray jacket or green or blue, depending on the angle I hold it. Still looking at the camera. Still waiting. And sometimes on foggy nights, when I'm driving home on empty highways, I check my rearview mirror and see red and blue lights that disappear when I blink. The timestamp on my dash cam always reads 2 hours and 16 minutes when it happens. 1 minute earlier than before. The loop is still tightening. And I think Sophia knows I'm watching.